Well, hello everyone. Looks like I am live. So, how are you tonight? It's telling me I'm live, but I'm not seeing it as live. Well, anyway, how are you? Good to see you. Welcome, and I hope that you will enjoy tonight's show. How was your week? I don't know about you, but mine um yeah, I know many of you know that I deal with fibromyalgia and I take as many steps as I can to avoid flare ups. But boy, I don't know what it was this week. Something um, was in the air. I have some people here were saying that they're having problems with eyes itching. I don't know. Maybe that's something in the air. Not sure. World of politics is going crazy. You know, would you not agree on this? It's almost like you're waiting for what's next. I mean, we all sense it. We all know that something is whacked out. Um, I was reading today an article on, again, how medical science is still trying to deal with this whole thing of consciousness. It's one thing to say, well, we're all consciously aware. Have you heard that? Well, define what does that mean? We are all consciously aware. Does conscious mean I'm awake and therefore I am consciously aware? I don't know. Um, you know, I think sometimes I talk to people that I swear are wide awake and they're not there. Um, they got the essence, the shell, but you know, yeah. So, what state of consciousness is that? That's the question I ask myself. And as we think about consciousness individually, collectively, um, although there is some debate on whether or not humanity has the ability to come together collectively as individuals. I hope you brought your hot drink or cold beverage, whatever it may be like. And that's an interesting point. If you think about it, we've been at this now 6,000 years, give or take 500. And by all evidence, it doesn't seem we have the ability to do that. And even when we, as a species, as Homo sapiens, begin to find commonality, yet within the commonality, we will have divisions. And it doesn't seem like we have the conscious ability to actually come together collectively. Maybe that's been part of the problem. I'm not sure. I know this. I know history is having to be rewritten. Was reading in another article about the pyramids that, all right, get this. So the guy that found Khufu's pyramid, some dude in the 1880s, he was, I don't know, I think he was a colonel. I'm not sure. He was up there. Anyway, he had spent the equivalency of about $1.5 million. So remember, this is back in the 1880s and had nothing to show for it. And then the jackass goes and starts using explosives to basically find these hidden passages that supposedly led to Khufu's chamber, which was never found. Well, the notes that he originally had apparently was in the entrance where he was supposedly made this find, didn't find any hieroglyphics. But yet, a year and a half later, when he had returned to London, in his book that he published, was the fact that they had found the insignia for Khufu. Well, now that they've actually done testing on the ink, the substance that was there, no. So there we go. History. It's being rewritten as I talk, as y'all talk. And I think this is just the beginning. Whatever we entered into, now I contend that the initial wave hit about 2005, 2006. Some state earlier, about 1996. Well, whatever is happening, we can all agree that just read the headlines. I mean, people, it's freaky out there, man. I mean, it really is. And I just sometimes, it's like, how many of you been on the merry-go-round? I know that Six Flags in every one of their locations always has the merry-go-round. And it's like you're on this thing. And here's the weird part of it. If you're on it, then the outside perspective of reality is like, whoa, it's that scene in The Wizard of Oz, you know, when Dorothy was inside the tornado and you're seeing this kaleidoscope go by and it's just weird. And then when you say, well, I want to get off this crazy thing, you get off of it and suddenly the perspective is reversed. You're watching the people on the merry-go-round and you're thinking, hey, that's crazy. And it is. But it forms the reality. So before I get into it, I just want to stop in and say hello. Wow, there I am. Wow, there's about 100 of us. Hello, everyone. How are y'all? Hey, everyone. Sophie. Boy, a lot of y'all in here. Well, all right. Let me not digress and take away from what I was talking about. All right. So reality. All right. Reality could be defined, I think you would agree, by what you and I see or feel. I mean, if let's say your sight is impaired, you begin to rely on the other senses. And the biggest one is touch. You know, our fingers actually can become our eyes. So that's what defines our reality. And then I would say hearing, right? I think hearing would have a very big impact. Smell. I think smell would then be down there. And so that's how I would see it. The greatest one being what we can see. So if we can agree on, at least for this discussion tonight, that sight is the highest primer on the reality chart. What we see defines our reality. That's why when we go to, I remember in Vegas going to David Copperfield, Sigmund and Roy, um, you know, Chris Angel, and that dude was weird, and a couple of others. And the reason why we love to be entertained by magicians is that it alters our perception of reality. If you really want to watch one of the best shows, I watch it on Netflix because it's just one that I love studying people, is the Carbonaro effect. The dude is good. But what I love particularly about watching the show is that it's like watching a focus group. Now, in my career, coming through marketing and sales, um, you had to get good. You had to learn about people. And the thing about people is that they'll always surprise you. That's why you do focus groups. But I digress. So, Michael Carbonaro, what he does is he's so good at it that the illusion literally throws people into a momentary cognitive dissonant reality. They're aware of what they know to be reality. And that's what we all base our whole being upon. And it's when one of those elements that get askew that problems happen. And so check it out. Watch them. I'll guarantee you some of it is you laugh because you can see yourself in it. You know that if you were the victim of the prank, and none of us like that because, again, it shows us how fragile our basis of reality is. So I did a presentation. I put together a presentation. You know, that's what I do. And this one is going to be dealing with what I call the full spectrum. And so let me get myself out of the picture. So when we talk about reality, reality is based upon what this organ brings to us. As I said, we agreed going in on the supposition here that sight would be the highest primer on here for our reality basis. So what we see through this organ defines a lot of who we are. We look in the mirror. This is what we see as ourselves. So we call that sight, right? So this presentation is about the visible spectrum, the full spectrum. Now, the visible spectrum is a part of the full spectrum. And as you can see, it's a portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that is visible to the human eye. Electromagnetic radiation in this range of wavelengths is called visible light or simply light. Now, we know in past programs that I've done that light is not what we all think light is. But in this case, this is visible light. A typical human eye will respond to wavelengths from about 390 to 700 nanometers. In terms of frequency, this corresponds to a band in the vicinity of the 430 to 770, and I think that that's terahertz. The spectrum does not, however, contain all the colors that the human eye and brain can distinguish. Unsaturated colors such as pink or purple variations such as magenta are absent, for example, because they can be made only by mix of multiple wavelengths. Colors containing only one wavelength are also called pure colors or spectral colors. So right here, we have to establish that number one, what we are seeing is actually part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Radiation is what it is. And it's within a certain defined narrow bandwidth. Okay? Now, it is interesting to realize that sight can also be controlled by frequency. You on with me? Okay. So, what we know is this: humans see very little. And that's about it right there. So, what we consider as visible light is actually a small portion of a continuous range of frequencies produced from the sun, known as the electromagnetic spectrum. The subdividing of the entire spectrum into smaller spectra is done mostly on the basis of how each region of electromagnetic waves interacts with matter. I tell you, this just gets, it opens up. Well, all right, let me continue. So here is what we got going on here. As you can see, this is the human brain. It's your eyeballs right here. And as you can see, we see in opposite reverse what cameras do. And then the brain, the amazing thing about it is the mind, actually, folks, that puts it all together instantaneously. But remember, we got two things going on here. We've got this thing called spatial reality happening, because it's what's happening up here that defines here. Okay? So, you see, I told you we're going to learn something tonight. So it's an amazing process how we define reality. This is, when you think about it, very fragile, extremely fragile. And the process is not visual. We now know that it's really, simply put, frequency. And this organ only operates within a defined parameter of a set of standards. Okay? So when you look at this, this is what we can see. Now, if you move your head back and forth, if you're watching this on a full screen, it really starts to jack with you on the two ends. It really does, because it extends out there, but it's amazing depending on your light. All right, so I pulled this up. Visible light is only one component of the wide range of waveforms known as the electromagnetic spectrum. So here you can go here. You can see gamma rays, which is high energy, X-rays, ultraviolet. This is where we see infrared, microwaves, UHF, and then low energy radio waves. And you can see how each one has that application. Now, the visible wavelengths pass through the optical window, which is our eye, the region of the electromagnetic spectrum that allows wavelengths to pass largely unattenuated through the Earth's atmosphere. An example of this phenomenon is that clean air scatters blue light more than red wavelengths. And so the midday sky appears blue. The optical window is also referred to as the visible window because it overlaps the human visible response spectrum. Very important. The near infrared, what we call NIR, window lies just out of the human vision. Now, some humans, you can do studies on this, can actually, through genetic whatever, can see outside these lines better than other humans. Anyway, as well as the medium wavelength infrared window and the long wavelength or the far infrared window, which animals primarily see in. So here we go. It's amazing when you stop and think about this, that this one organ, how much it defines our reality. And then when you think about what we can actually see, it's only 3%. And you can begin to see the shift of other living organisms. So we know that being human, we're handicapped. Hey, listen, how many of us have animals that, though the animals at times can act very freaky, very strange, they see something? So here we go. Now, you look at the wavelengths, the visible light, and how, think about this, folks, we're immersed all around this. I don't know if they had this 6,000 years ago. I don't know if they had this, 10,000 years ago. All I know is that we have it today. And it's everywhere around us. And when you begin to look at here, microwaves, in Russia, they don't allow their citizens to have microwaves. I don't think they should be here either. Infrared, skin burns. The way it is today, we all know, ultraviolet, damaging to the cells. We're under attack more and more from gamma rays. They are actually the mutation and damage to our cells. I have been contending this for the longest time, and there's plenty of other scientific evidence. Even if you didn't believe in transhumanism and about what I'm about to show you as far as full spectrum reality is, the mutation and the damage that's taking place to Homo sapiens is going to be forever altering us down the genetic path. So when we look at lights and pigments, it just depends on how the absorption is into which of the light spectrum it falls in. So you can see it's a very narrow wavelength. I brought this out here because you got two different types of radiation when we're dealing with electromagnetic radiation spectrum. Not only is it in the visible side for us, as you can see right here, but when I said that this is now around us as a species, again, 100 years ago, folks, this didn't exist. And I really don't know what it's doing to us, and even from the cosmic gamma radiation affecting us now, and the radiation we get from our sun. It's mutating, apparently, a lot. But I digress. This is not about gene mutation. I've told you, don't call it Wi-Fi anymore. It is Wi-Fi. Are you seeing what I'm trying to tell you? It's radiation, folks. We are immersed in it 24/7. Now, excuse me. I'm of the baby boomer generation. We didn't quite have it this like it is today. We had an announcement that in our family, there's a new child on the way. They'll be born in 2018. And I was thinking, I have no idea what that child is coming into. But I do know this, they won't be able to escape this. So when you look at this and you begin to think about this, folks, so sight defines reality, but the sight that we see is a part of another higher energy. That higher energy is all around us. So I think we pretty well begin to establish now how very little of the light spectrum we actually can see. Now, what if, I apologize for that, if you were, let's say, had the ability to begin to see beyond what we can see? And I mean primarily white light, because that's the only light that we actually see is white light. And many of you, if you're reading the book that those of you have asked, and there's been a lot of people that have asked for it, I think you're catching on to something I'm trying to show you here. So we get colors within this visible light spectrum. And now here's the amazing thing. You know, when you hear about the televisions now, the 4K and the ultra 4K HD, et cetera, that's going to continue to go up, 9 billion colors. Well, we will learn very quickly here that we're going to be able to split every light ray in the visible spectrum and beyond. I'm an avid backyard astronomer. I love with my telescopes to get out there and just see, particularly here in Colorado in the wintertime, particularly, we get some of the best, clearest skies, even being as close to as an urban center as Denver. But so I'm very familiar with being able to film. I have a number of filters that I can actually look into the infrared. I know that on the ultraviolet, it's one of the things that we're finding and you're going to see in a little bit in this presentation, how we're seeing the universe. And we're learning now how to break down X-rays, gamma rays, and I'm sure we're going to find even something further beyond this. So on this, it's the absorption. Kind of weird, plants, they have the chlorophyll. Well, it's the absorption of the white light that causes the photosynthesis. And for us, it's how we see. We're absorbing light. So I think I've pretty well defined now what's going on around us. And here, by the way, is the radio spectrum. When you think about it, you and I right now are being inundated with every radio station in your area, every television station, every satellite that's beaming. When you think about how much radiation that we are absorbing, it's amazing. But you see, we don't let that define our reality. We're allowing, the spectrum of what we see defining this. But in the scheme of things, we have built this all around us. Now, the animal kingdom, if you can see here, and it doesn't take much. All you have to do is get outside just a little bit, and it changes everything. We're finding that whether it's reptiles, birds, or even the most amazing creature, the mantis shrimp. I mean, this dude is really a pretty cool creature because it's how it actually sees. And it's how it actually breaks down. Look at how it sees into the light spectrum compared to us. So I'll guarantee you this. Now, I can't speak for the mantis shrimp, but I'll guarantee you it sees things that we can't see. So it's like, how do you know I'm seeing red? And how do I know that you can see the same blue that I'm seeing? People that are colorblind, they can't see outside the spectrum. Here's a dog's view. Now, here's a common view. This is how a snake sees it. And that is visible reality. It's how a butterfly sees its reality. We know that we can do this with flare. And just because humans can't see something in the visible spectrum does not mean it does not exist. I believe that there are beings, life forms, that exist outside of our visible light spectrum, whether that be in the ultraviolet or the infrared. It's how we see the universe. There are well over 24 deep field telescopes now. And it's how we begin to see this strange thing called the galactic center, the core. I mean, I'm just telling you, I think we haven't seen the full light spectrum yet. Listen, we're getting better at it. And the more that we do, the stranger the universe really becomes. This is Chandra. If it wasn't our ability to see into the different X-ray spectrums, infrared, we would not see these other galaxies. We would not be able to define these, well, the most interesting things if we were not able to break it and expand out into beyond our visual perception. And this is the universe. You can see how Chandra brings out what isn't known or seen. Gamma ray burst. Gamma rays are invisible to us. We can't see them. We can measure them, but there are times when they do get into the visible light spectrum, and these are photons, that we can see that. So this is getting more into the full spectrum. And it's defined our reality now of what the universe looks like. And we're finding that as we get more sophisticated in, defining the full light spectrum, the full spectrum, that space it still confounds us. So you can see in the X-ray detail what we can actually see now. We know that the blue stars are young hot stars, whereas the red ones are older. It's just to me. Now, so imagine then what could possibly be out in space, but because it's in a different light shift, maybe we can't see what's already something that's there. I mean, if sight can be controlled by frequency, right? How would we know? I mean, there's a lot of debate on the moon itself. And if you bring the ET factor in, which I think you have to, maybe our vision is not quite what really is out there. Maybe it's something far beyond. I mean, who knows? Again, we've only been around for 6,000 years or so, right, for the written record. But let's get now to, again, reality, the full spectrum. When we got better with our camera equipment, and remember, cameras are a recent addition to the human consciousness. And particularly for the commoner, today everyone has it. That's unprecedented. That's never happened before. So I caution everyone that says, well, you know, this is just some anomaly. No, listen, I believe that our machines capture a light spectrum that we cannot see with our human eye. And whether you want to say that these pictures are somewhere not true, many of these were from the days of where they put film on there. But there definitely seems to be more and more evidence that people are capturing ghosts, spirits, some form of life form. Now, obviously, what's happening here is that we're seeing something more or less probably in the ultraviolet light spectrum more than the infrared. So can we see spirits because they happen to absorb certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum? Is that what we actually can see? Now, let's go deeper. We all remember the classic movie, They Live. And Roddy Piper has passed on. He's out there wherever the next point is. The point of this movie was this: we were being manipulated. And it was only when you put on the glasses that you saw a different frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum. And the reality of the people in the movie, the humans, was that they never knew any difference. You know, as we come up on this supposed holiday, to me, this is exactly what's happened today. We have become indoctrinated because our reality, again, is based and predicated upon what we see. But what we don't realize is that the brain is a receptor of radio frequencies of all kinds. And I think this is what's happened to us today. I mean, if you read the stories, what happened on these Black Friday sales and what have you, you could say that this is your God. You know, I caught hell from my video program called Checkmate. And I still contend this is the God people worship. Because I believe that there is something else here with us. We just can't see it. But we certainly seem to be under, how shall I say this? We certainly be under subservience to something. Because this is all, you think about this, folks, this is all life is now. We've lost the time of going and living on farms and depending upon ourselves. This is the machine. This is the God. Simon and Garfunkel, you know, the people bowed and obeyed to the neon God that they had made. Visible light, ladies and gentlemen, visible light. And when you begin to think about the full spectrum, how would you know an authentic picture from an alien race that was sent to our planet. We now know that the art of invisibility is here. We figured this one out. Again, waves, light waves, altering and mastering them makes you invisible. And we've talked about this already. 5G, mind control. Everyone's got one now. You know, people got kind of upset with me also when I said that, we're all worshiping this God, even now, because there's no escape. I think that this thing has got us so under control, you can't go anywhere. Maybe the hollow earth is probably the last freaking place you can go. But I know this, we have now mastered the ability of scattering light waves and making things bend invisible. And it's not that they're invisible, they're there the whole time. It's just the electromagnetic spectrum has been altered. Think about this. And we can do it in the lab, they're doing it in the field. We talk about cloaking technology, things of clouds taking shapes that don't seem normal. You don't have cube-shaped clouds. You don't have round clouds. But who knows what we could be seeing? We can't see either in the infrared or the ultraviolet. I contend that we live in a multiverse, not a single universe, but we coexist in multiple verses. And the only difference is that we can't see into that frequency. Now, I'm pulling this up because I think that this deserves something to be talked about. We know of our ancestors. We know that they were here. We see their bones. And I often wondered what happened, because it's very clear that we've had two different paths. Seems like one path was allowed to, how shall we say, excel when the others weren't. And we know our ancestors were here, got their footprints. We also know some of them were pretty big. So I think about, what was his time like? If we have the Sumerian record, where does this cat fall in? Was he here before Göbekli Tepe? Was he here before the Crux cave drawings? More modern. What was their reality? How did they perceive things? Were they under the same influence that today that we are? Were they controlled? And now that we find evidence of other species, how does this fit in to reality? Again, I wonder what their ability of sight was. I'm just saying that we live in today of a time that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you look at the standard supposed, how shall we say, org chart, well, it's got more holes in it than Swiss cheese. So the question I keep asking myself, are we multiple dimensional beings that now have so intermingled in bloodlines, in cross species? What have we done to ourselves? Is it because now that we're bathed in this constant electric magnetic bath, is this how we begin to ascend or descend? I mean, is it just the fact that someone is actually outside looking in and hitting all the switches? I mean, I don't know. It's like sometimes we get into this and sometimes we don't. It's very difficult to figure out. So, excuse me. Let me cancel this. All right. There we go. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that because we have been so limited in how we define reality. I mean, I think about this, how we as a species, how we worship gods. They're never shown. They never show up. It's always the invisible. They live in another spectrum. That's the only way I think you can define it. So I haven't seen what's going on in the chat room. Eric, I agree with you on that. I think we are only 1% measurable. So there you go, folks. Kind of strange, isn't it? And I still say as we continue to advance, we're going to continue to be able to see more and more. I think that it's the inevitability. I think it's the way that we have designed this thing. Encore Fire, thank you. You hear frequencies quite often. Good. Listen, a lot of them. You know, I read in an article today that smartphones, that they're really now beginning to have an effect on teenagers. And I went, really? At what point did that suddenly hit out for everyone's reality? I don't know. And if you look at space weather, like I do every morning, and you begin to now to see the gamma ray reports, we're now getting, I'm telling you, next year, you're going to see it becoming more and more. You're going to have alerts for cardiac. You're going to have issues for memories because of the saturation of the gamma rays. I contend that we're still, our genetics, our DNA is being altered. But anyway, there you go. Telepathic communication is the only way to go. Cherry, I would agree with you on that. 100%. It is the only way to go. So, as I ease on out of this evening's meeting, I think we're in for some startling events next year. I think I'm going to be on this Friday night show, and we're going to be talking about things that we could not had imagined. And I think that these are coming from all around. As I said about chaos, the thing about chaos is that it's both positive, negative. Hopefully we can cipher off, but I got a sense that there is some crazy things still coming. I don't think 2017 was just an opener. And I'm not saying it's all negative, but I don't know. I don't know about you and I, but someone asked me an email, what do you see happening, in the markets? I'll tell you what I see happening. There's a correction going to come. Eventually, it's going to hit us. This is a wild ride. I remember the collapse of 1985, and I remember the collapse of 2000. 9/11 did that for us. In fact, the day of 9/11, I was actually in a venture capital headquarters making a presentation. Um, and I can still remember the secretary coming in, disrupting the meeting, saying that, anyway. And, you know, the Great Depression, and listen, the depression that we went into in 1929, I keep telling you folks, we're still in it. I think that what we're seeing now, there is a wave that comes in on this. And even if we have a correction coming into 2018, there's still enough momentum, I think, that will carry the economy at least for the next couple of years. But I do believe that we've never emerged out of it. We haven't. A little bit concerned on this budget. If they pass this, I can't see. We're adding another $1 trillion, folks. This is to the U.S., folks. And the rest of y'all around the world, it's all connected. But my point is another $1 trillion. I don't know. Does that worry anybody? It does me. So, what do y'all think about the whole concept as the movie They Live? Do you think that that could really be happening to us? I'm just curious. I just wanted to see what people may think of that. I'm just looking in here. Well, there's some good comments in here. Melanie, great concept. Yeah, Patrick, that is our kids' money. It is insanity. Someone asked me in an email what my thought was on Bitcoin. Bitcoin, again, is more evidence of this unseen God. It's weird. I think that the fiat currencies are eventually going to collapse. I think that if you look at steel, Greece hasn't recovered. Venezuela is being ignored, but it's eventually going to come in. I think 2018 is going to be a really interesting year. And what if disclosure actually happens? What if all the conspiracy theories of, other species actually being a part of all this, being behind all this? Listen, I still contend that there is two bloodlines that basically run the show here on planet Earth. And these bloodlines go way back. I've done enough research that it's very plain to me that the mechanism, when I did in the presentation, I was showing you about Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, these other versions of us that look very primitive, but I think that may be foolish. As I still contend, we're going to do a show on this. I want to hear what your thoughts are, is this gap. If we take it from a theological perspective and you say, well, I have this holy book that gives me a time frame here. Okay. That's what I grew up on. Even though what was taught in school, I still relied on that. Well, we know something's wrong now. It's still that whole point, these gaps. Is it as the book, The Species with Amnesia? Have we collapsed before? It seems like we're in this repetitive pattern with all these other versions of us that have been here. is it true that there were a division of species that we happen to be the improved model, that they tweaked us in the creation chambers? I'm almost beginning to think that this could be the theory of seeding, because it's very plain to me. I think something's gone on here. I think that our species today, we were a plant. I mean, if Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, Homo erectus, if those species existed, which we have from an anthropology point of view, we got their bones. We know a lot that we've actually found where they lived. We see how they lived. Then we have the dichotomy of the people of Sumer, the civilization that was here before even Göbekli Tepe. I don't know. Well, there you go, folks. My mind never stops on these things. So I'm just sitting in here. All goes back to Antarctica. Well, I definitely say there's something down there. You're not going to get me to disagree with that. This is the age of psychopaths. D-Truth. Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree. No doubt. Slightly slanted, I agree. I think we are slaves. That's the problem. I continue to say this, is that, you know, I backed off on this whole deity thing. I still say it exists. I still say that we're playing right into it. I don't know, Donald. By the way, someone said, and I got to bring this out. So I said, has anyone seen The Dark Side of the Moon? Someone wrote back and said, yeah, you can see it on the new moon, but we never see the new moon because it's always next to the sun. Is that how that goes? I mean, I'm not questioning it, but I am questioning it, because how can we see it? You know, I was there for the eclipse, and I don't remember seeing the moon. Never could get any pictures of it. So are we really seeing? They said that the moon rotates. I have never seen the moon rotate. So again, maybe I'm suffering from a little cognitive disassociation, but yeah. So I'm not really sure on that. And I've gotten some great pictures of the eclipse. I told you all about the story. We all got sick. That was a strange, strange thing. I say that there was a portal opened. Claudette, you sent me a book. I'm getting it about portals. Anyway, I think that that's another thing that's going on. Are we in the 7-year period? I keep on thinking about that. You know, it's like, well, the next eclipse will be in 7 years. And if this is just the beginning of this roller coaster, holy crap, folks. Anyway, the moon is flat. It is flat, because I've never seen it any other way. I've only seen one side of it. So, but what do I know? Oh, by the way, you know why the guy that was going to do the rocket ship to show that the flat Earth was flat, you know why he couldn't take off, right? Because he didn't get when he did his first test, he used the trigonometry based on a globe. And this time he didn't, so he couldn't go anywhere. So anyway, there you go. All right. Well, folks, I've been here within an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I do appreciate you stopping by. Thank you. Thank you, by the way, for the emails you send. Thank you for the kind comments. I really like the information that's coming, and it's amazing as y'all continue to learn on your own, and then you feed information to me, and I look at this, it's all tied together. Every part of it is. We're an amazing discovery, folks. I look at all of y'all that come and visit here and sit in. Wish I could do the virtual coffee. If I can figure that one out, I'll let you know. But these, for me, when I read the comments, is a time for learning for myself. Y'all are pretty smart. So here's to you. And thank you. I'll be with Jeff Sunday morning. And who knows, may come back tomorrow evening. But if not, we'll definitely be live again Monday night. And I'm sure something else will manifest itself. All right, folks, be kind to one another. Thank you all, and have a great weekend. Get some rest. Remember, the mind needs a little downtime, so take care of that for yourself. Good mental health. It's one of the things that we need to all edify one another. Our governments can actually drive you to become a psychopath if you listen to us. We've got to stay together. We've got to edify, build up one another, and hold on to one another, because it's getting weird out there, folks. It's getting weird. All right, my friends. Appreciate you. We'll talk real soon.